Good afternoon and welcome to the May 25th Oklahoma City Planning Commission meeting. If you have pagers or cell phones with you, we would ask that you silence them or turn them off during the course of the meeting. And if you are not the applicant and you want to address us about a case, there are sign-up sheets. They're on the table outside the chambers, and we'd be happy to hear you when we hear the case. First order of business is to receive the minutes of the May 11th meeting.
I move to receive the minutes.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Mike? Mike? There we go. Okay, thank you. The minutes are received. Next is continuance requests. Aubrey?
We have one uncontested request for continuance, item B22 for case PUD 1644, requested to defer to June 22nd.
Anyone here today to talk to us about item 22?
Move to continue.
Microphone.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to continue item 22. Cast your votes. That's approved.
We've also received 3 new requests for continuance, item B9 for SPUD 966 to be withdrawn, item B10 for SPUD 967 to defer to August 24th, and item B14 for PUD 1645 to defer to June 8th.
Is there anyone who came to talk to us today about items 9, 10, or 14 on our agenda?
Move for continue. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the additional continuances. Cast your votes, and those are approved. Are there any continuance requests from the public today? If not, we'll go to the consent docket, and if it's agreeable with the commissioners, I'd like to include item 5 in the consent docket. As I read the case, it's probably where it should have been.
Do you need a motion to do that?
I've got a question on item 1, 3, and 5. Sorry. There's it's a clarification, and I think it'll all go smoothly, but I've got a question on those 3.
In that
I'll move
case,
items 2 and 4.
yeah, the consent docket is now items 2 and 4.
Yeah.
I'll take a motion.
Move approval of 2 and 4.
Okay, we're voting to approve 2 and 4. Cast your votes. Those are approved. Back to number 1 for Mr. Bright. Is the applicant here?
So item 1 for the record is C6896, the final plat of Cedar Ridge at Morgan Creek, Section 3.
Good afternoon, Kendall Dillon with Crafton Toll, representing the applicant, and just a second, so it's about the 4th final plat. Conforms to the preliminary plat, agree with the TEs, and answer any questions.
Here's my question, is that this preliminary plat was approved 13 years ago. On item number 3, this is not yours, but it was approved 11 years ago. And on number 5, I don't know when that was, but none of them provide for sidewalks.
They have sidewalks.
Huh?
They have sidewalks.
Well, the reason I'm raising the question is I usually read that in the staff report that the sidewalks will be along da-da-da-da-da. And this, I'm not a real careful reader, but I read it 2 or 3 times and couldn't find any reference to sidewalks in 1, 3, or 5. So if you say that you're going to have sidewalks as required, then I'll move approval of item number 1.
Second.
Do we want to know where they are, if we're going to have a TE for sidewalks? Sidewalks are provided on all streets. What do you...
I mean, they're required.
Pardon me?
I think they're required.
By subdivision regulations,
Right.
actually. That's right.
So that's the reason they're...
But John, that's my question.
They're
Usually we see that in the staff report,
Well-
that sidewalks are going to be on, et cetera. And my question really was of 1 and 3, since the preliminary plats were approved 13 years ago and 11 years ago, are they grandfathered in, from our sidewalk ordinance that we have, or our policy?
They're required.
Okay. So that's all
Required now is-
And I move approval of item number 1 with the new TE, the sidewalks.
And that's your question about number 3, which is Kendall's case as well. Do you have sidewalks there?
Yes.
All right, let's have a motion to approve 1 and 3 together.
Are you involved in 3 too?
Yes.
Yes.
And 5. May have sidewalks in that one, too.
Second.
And 5.
Okay, we have a
Second,
motion
1
to
and 3.
approve items 1 and 3. 5 is yours too?
Yep. Whispering Creek. Yes.
Okay. Well, motion is second, and a second to approve items 1, 3, and 5. Cast your votes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kendall.
Thank you, Kendall.
No, I asked from the public earlier. And who are you?
Hello. Terry Massey with Grubbs Consulting.
Are we on item 6?
Item 6, yes.
Okay, for C-6893, the preliminary plat of Tinker Villas.
Hi. We agree to the technical evaluations. And hope no one has any questions.
No one has signed up, commissioners.
Okay, I'm going to break my own rule here. I have just a comment to make. I'm a little concerned about the number of these, single strip, cul-de-sac subdivisions that we're seeing. I don't think we ought to get in the habit of that, for what it's worth.
I don't disagree. I mean, it's just a strange piece of dirt to be turning into a subdivision. Nothing prevents it in the subdivision regulations or the zoning ordinance, however, so as Terry knows, other than saying it's not what we'd like to be seeing, we're going to see some of them as people have these kinds of lots.
It does not require a variance, is that correct? I move approval.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 6. Cast your votes, and it's approved.
Thank you.
Item 7 is SP 492. It's a special permit application for a telecommunication tower at 6420 North Meridian Avenue.
Good afternoon. Tracy Malone, Falcon Foster, here for U.S. Cellular. Thanks for continuing this matter to today. We now have the FAA determination of no hazard to air navigation. So the FAA has reviewed this proposal and deemed it to be appropriate. We don't have any lighting or marking requirements for this one either as it relates to the FAA. This is an application for a special use permit because we need an exception to the wireless ordinance to install an 100-foot wireless tower approximately 250 feet away from an existing 80-foot Crown-owned tower. The Crown-owned tower has an available attachment height of 60 feet. U.S. Cellular needs 100 feet. So this is an exception to the tower-to-tower setback. Currently, U.S. Cellular is operating a rooftop antenna facility across the street at Lake Park Center. U.S. Cellular needs to relocate to meet updated FCC requirements for its operating license. These updated requirements are Lake Hefner and Highway 3 data coverage. Staff has asked for proof that the Lake Hefner and Highway 3 coverage can't be obtained at the Crown-owned tower, so I've provided that in the materials that you have before you and in the record. But essentially, the proof is the top position of 80 feet on this Crown-owned wireless tower that exists is occupied, and the top position that's available is 60 feet. So that would be a 60-foot attachment height for U.S. Cellular, 40 feet less than what they're asking for. It offers a 25% or one-fourth coverage that the 100-foot attachment height pole would provide. Now, the radio frequency engineers have provided mapping to demonstrate these facts. Also, the Crown pole installation would not adequately cover specifically Lake Hefner Parkway, Dulce Youth Park, or North MacArthur Boulevard, south of Northwest Expressway, or Northwest Expressway itself. So some of the existing coverage that's being provided for by the rooftop installation would not be provided for at 60 feet on the Crown-owned tower. So we have to leave the Lake Park Center for various reasons, and I just want to make that clear to you as well. The FCC safety emissions are more stringent for rooftops. To achieve safe emissions, the range of antennas need to power at a lower level because there'll be more antennas up there. This will result in less geographic coverage for the planned proposed antennas. In fact, the current coverage won't be achieved with any new installation because of the power levels if they were to put more antennas on the rooftop. So additionally, with regard to the rooftop, the U.S. Cellular antennas are directional, and the rooftop layout does not allow for the antennas to be positioned in the direction that they need to be positioned in to provide the correct coverage. There are general standards for the approval of special permits, and these standards are met. It needs to comply with the comprehensive plan, have no impact on adjacent uses, no traffic to speak of. This is an unmanned facility. And it also limits the impact on public facilities. Only utilities, fiber will be necessary. There are no access issues. The access would be from North Meridian. So I respectfully request the special permit approval to install a wireless facility and to obtain a tower-to-tower setback exception.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? No one has signed up.
Let me make a comment. I've given up the fight. It's like, it is what it is, and I can't disguise them as a pine tree. I've given it up. I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 7. Cast your votes, and it's approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 8 is SPUD 965 to rezone 3801 Northwest 23rd Street from R1 to SPUD 965.
My name is Flori Quiros, and I have a renting house. I want to transfer to a small business like a barber shop and office renting.
Janice, you want to
I do.
weigh in on
I've
this?
met with Ms. Quiros, and we've gone through her application. We're going to make a few changes to it. We're going to narrow the uses to just 2, convenience sales and personal services, further limited to a barber shop, and administrative and professional offices. There's going to be only one point of access onto Nesbitt Avenue per the TE, and there'll be just one non-illuminated accessory sign, not to exceed 100 square feet. That will not be on the Nesbitt Avenue frontage. And she will install an 8-foot-high site-proof fence along the northern boundary of the property. And I have those for you if you need them. So, I'm not a big fan of residential conversions. I really wrestled with this one. Staff was very helpful, and we talked kind of through some limitations that would make it more palatable. The location of it very specifically, she owns the property next door to the west and lives there. And so where it is situated, I'm hoping will not be a domino along the north side of Northwest 23rd Street the way the south side is. So with those changes, which she's agreed to, is there anybody who wants to be heard on this subject?
No one has signed up.
Janice, the 2 uses are limited to what?
To convenience sales and personal services, further limited to a barber shop, and then administrative and professional offices. I'll move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve item 8 as conditioned. Cast your votes, and that's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Item 9 was withdrawn. Item 10 was continued. So item 11 is SPUD 977 to rezone 1010 Northeast 7th Street from R2 and C3 to SPUD 977.
Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates here on behalf of the applicant. For those of you that are familiar with this area, this is the ongoing renovation of the Page Woodson area. The tract to the east of this tract, subject tract, is under construction and reaching completion of units that are multifamily units that are specifically designed for the college students at the medical center. And this PUD or SPUD is a mirror of what's been approved on the other one. With regard to some of the comments the staff has made, there was some concern about the height of these buildings relative to the house on the corner. This is the elevation of the buildings as you'll see down 6th Street. Very similar in nature, changing colors, but they're very specifically designed to meet the college students' needs. There was vignettes held to have discussions about needs in the area, and this is kind of what they ended up with, pushing the units very urban towards the front and putting all the parking in the back off of a new paved alley that will be dedicated to the city. You see on the drawing how the units are up at the front and all the parking is the rear. Councilman Cooper had asked about why we didn't include the lots west of us in the north half of the block, and something that we did when we first started and rezoned the original plat or parcel was that we agreed that we would not, the developer nor urban renewal would approach any neighbors. The development of this tract has come about because two neighbors, one was in probate and the other one was an elderly woman that wanted to sell, approached us, and we were able to negotiate and purchase the land that was in between urban renewals properties. So it allowed us to collectively put this together and expand the project. So the one thing I'll point out is that one of the points the staff has made is the concern about landscaping. We do plan heavy landscaping on these. We've hired a landscape architect. He's working on this Phase 2 now. The permit for Phase 1's landscaping has been submitted to the city and is under review. And as you know, that construction is going fast. It does fit into the overall master plan that was in the original zoning. This plat parcel, which is the phase that's under construction, and all of this was under the master plan of the original PUD. So this piece is filling in this portion of this block. The height of our building next to the residential is, it meets the two-story height limitation of 35 feet measured to the midpoint on the roof. So we're not really any different than if somebody wanted to build a two-story house there. So, and I agree with all the TEs that are in the report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Is there any limitation on the commercial uses, that they be accessory to the residential development, or are they, I mean, some of the uses are not things that I would want to see built there independently of this kind of residential use?
That's a good question. I think that the intent of, and we did mirror this, and I probably should have taken those commercial uses out, because there's no commercial planned in this phase. The only commercial was in the previous phase, and it was in the corner building on the southeast corner, and it was in conjunction with the rentals.
So can we take them out now?
We can take them out.
I like that idea.
I think this is a really, really needed and good project, particularly for this area. And it is still redeveloping, and I think Tim and I discussed the uses, and some of them of which I would not or have wanted to see, but then I don't exactly know how all of the areas is really going to end up developing. I thought that maybe it would still be a good project. So I'll move for approval.
Well, Aubrey and I toured it on Tuesday night, I guess. I say Aubrey and I toured it with the ULI group on Tuesday evening, toured the project.
Yes.
And I toured this particular piece of land with Ron Bradshaw before the meeting. And I think the project's going to improve the area, improve the value in the area. And it's, as you point out, really needed. The reason that they're not going for any property to the west, for example, is the agreement is if a property owner approaches them, they can consider an acquisition. But the understanding with urban renewal is that they could not seek to expand beyond these lines unless approached. So that's how it unfolded.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Yes. As conditioned by removing the commercial uses.
Yes.
Cast your votes. And item 11 is approved. Thank you.
Item 12 is SPUD 979 to rezone 3714 Northwest 9th from I-1 and R1 to SPUD 979.
Give us your name and address for the record, please.
Keena Oden, 4,000 North Kelly Avenue.
Okay, thank you.
I'm here on behalf of the buyer and the seller. I'm the listing agent. So the applicant is out of town, so he asked me to be present for him.
Okay, right now the tract is vacant, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Commissioners, this is Ward 3. No one has signed up.
I just had one question. There was a note that there's a proposed 10-foot rear yard setback, which was not what would be required in I-1. So I was wondering if there was a reason that we didn't add a TE to require a larger one.
What was the question?
There's a notation in the staff report that the master design statement proposes a 10-foot rear yard setback, which is less than I-1 requirements, but there's no TE that would require.
We didn't really have an issue with a 10-foot setback. The normal setback would have been 15.
Okay.
I would like to make one comment. It's not showing on the drawing that it says that the vacant lot to the north of that large piece. It says it's vacant, but it's not. There's an on-queue there, and there's already a lot of traffic there.
Okay, good, thank you. Yeah, they all are. No one has signed up.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 12. Cast your votes. And it's approved. Thank you.
Can I ask one more question? I had the neighbor called me, and he was not opposing this, but it shows that at some point there was a area to be vacated to widen that road, and I guess on-queue was supposed to do it, and it's never got done. I think that was his only argument, that he wanted me to let everyone know that he wished it would get widened.
Well, thanks for pointing it out, but we'll leave it to staff to solve. After the 22nd.
Item 13 is SPUD 980 to rezone 1409 through 1425 Northwest 122nd from PUD 1134 to SPUD 980.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. This is a spud on Northwest 122nd Street between Penn and Western. What we have provided for is a C1 base with limited uses. There are 2 TEs, both of which we agreed to. We've got it's a tract that's kind of in an odd spot because we've got an electrical substation to our east, personal storage to our north. Obviously, we can't have any residential fronting on 122nd Street, so what we're trying to do is provide some limited commercial. We think we've done that with the limited uses in our spud. So agree to TEs, be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners? No one signed up.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve item 13. Cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Item 14 was continued. Item 15 is a comp plan amendment, 2017 number 4, to change the land use typology from rural low intensity to rural medium intensity, northeast of North Douglas Boulevard and east of Memorial Road.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Ken Bryan. I'm with the Oklahoma City Planning Department. I want to walk you through a couple of the pertinent items from the staff report on this requested comprehensive plan amendment. So, as the title indicates, we're looking at going from rural low to rural medium, and there's an associated rezoning for RA2. Taking a look at our land use topology map and providing a little context of where we're at, we're way up here near Lake Arcadia, actually adjacent to the city of Edmond, just north of the Turner Turnpike. Here's a look at the site in some detail. It's about 130 acres in size as far as the comprehensive plan amendment area is concerned. Includes goes out to the center of Douglas Boulevard and to the center of the turnpike there to the south. We'll look at some additional details that are pertinent to this site and its given land use topology. So the site's designated rural low. Rural low is appropriate for large lot rural subdivisions, 5 acres and larger in size typically. Limited amount of commercial and light industrial and ag uses are also appropriate here. That contrasts with the rural medium intensity in the terms of the lot size. Rural medium allows for slightly smaller lot sizes down to 2 acres, and we like to see those near a fire station. If you're going to put more lots and more uses, it would be good if those had more access to fire, and we actually have rural response time map for fire to take a look at. The site's mostly covered by upland forest. Upland forest is one of our environmentally sensitive areas in Plan OKC. There's provisions in the plan for taking care of the forest and preserving those as appropriate. Sites or specific land use in the area. There's rural residential on 2 sides. There's a lot of undeveloped tracts out here that haven't been platted or divided into lots really in any way, which is you would think is expected given the rural nature of the area. So looking at major services, of course it's rural, so there's no immediate access to public water or wastewater, and it's beyond the preferred response time for rural areas of the city. So let's take a quick look at that. It's an important component of this area. So I had to zoom out quite a bit here so we can see these 3 fire stations. It's about equidistant from 3 fire stations. It winds up being a little over 6 miles from each one. And so you're in that red zone there that is outside our response time target for rural areas. Of course, the orange is a response time target for rural development in Oklahoma City. So just to summarize why this area is designated rural low, it's outside the service area for our major utilities. It's outside the response time for fire. The prevailing rural character of the area and the presence of upland forests and limited access to the transportation system. The site has direct access to Douglas Boulevard. It's adjacent to the turnpike but doesn't really have access to the turnpike. So based on these findings, that Plan OKC calls for protection of rural character and ESAs. We can allow smaller lot sizes in locations with access to a fire station. There have been no changes to this site or nearby sites since the adoption of Plan OKC. The prevailing rural development character of the area and the fact that it's beyond the response target for fire led us to a recommendation to deny the application and maintain the rural low LUDA in this site. Happy to answer any
questions of Ken, commissioners? Well, let's hear from the applicant.
Good afternoon again. Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates here on behalf of the applicant. We've been working with the city staff on this project for a number of months and met with staff. And initially, staff's findings were somewhat supportive of our concept, and I can explain why. I think that, and I love working with the staff, and sometimes we just got to agree to disagree, but in this particular case, I think we can show that there's been some game changers out there as recently as a project that's currently under construction that impacts 160 acres and brings not only water from Edmond, but a storage tank that will provide adequate pressure for the area. And I'll show how that expands or how that impacts this area. So as Ken showed on his map, this is medium now. This is where that project I just mentioned is, there's 160 acres here. This is zoned to be 2-acre tracts. It was zoned much longer before we did this. And our subject tract is in between medium and an urban reserve over there, that triangle south of the turnpike, which is a little unique because there's no sewer or water over there. So the zoning pattern in the area, and again, right now I'm just talking about Oklahoma City, but the zoning pattern in the area, as you can see, there's been a lot of PUDs. The area that I was mentioning, there's a tower right here. There's public water, Oklahoma City water here, public Oklahoma City water here, connected to the Edmond treatment plant through an agreement that the city did a number of years ago. The PUD across the way, as I mentioned, is older, but there are small PUDs all over the place in here. There's an RA zoning over there. And here's how it impacts what we think the change that should be made in this area. So what you see on this map is we've included Edmond because the development around Lake Arcadia under Edmond criteria is 2-acre subdivisions. We're proposing a 2-acre subdivision. The area over here that I was mentioning where the public water is in blue, those are 30,000 square foot lots. And the reason they're so small is because there's water there. This area over here has actually, it's one of the old cluster zonings because it has densities that can be as dense as R1, as I believe it's written, but it's average of overall 2 acres. All these developments that are north of the city limit line, those are all 2-acre subdivisions that exist today. The area in yellow is fully developed. It was developed a number of years ago. Those are 5-acre tracts. This is the only piece that's undeveloped between 2-acre developments that are surrounding it. And we believe that the development pattern out here is very distinct and very much developed. This is developed, this is developed. As you go that way, there's much smaller lots developed. So this is really the only area that's, in my mind, a question, and part of that is already medium. We believe that not only would the plan need to be changed for this track, but I think this is an up-and-coming development track as well as this. More than likely, you'll see an application on this for 30,000 square foot lots because it's abutting a water line that's already been built. And Oklahoma City is maintaining that. So that's kind of the basis of our case. The other things that staff has expressed concern and the OKC plan covers is that we're concerned about this forestry area, and we've taken that into consideration. Although we're asking for a straight RA2 zoning, our developer is committed to putting covenants as well as notes on the plat with regard to how much you can clear on your lot, and intends on enforcing that. Those of you that are familiar with Stone Mill, I developed that with David Yost many, many years ago, and we've maintained that streetscape provision, and that's what this developer wants to do. We're not going to tear out trees 60 feet wide to put a street in. We're going to tear out just enough room to put the street in. But the utility, or there won't be any water or sewer, so we're not going to take any trees out for that. All the public utilities will be in the street. So we can minimize the damage we do to the trees and the forestry there. What the OKC plan aggressively asks for on 100% covered land is to maintain 60%. We are, with this plan, using a 40% lot coverage, which is high. We can maintain just a little over 60% of that. The developer is very hands-on. Obviously, we have the common space in the front that he wanted to leave as a buffer. We've got the Blue Line Creek that we're going to leave as a natural water source. We've located the common area for clubhouse adjacent to the stream because the plan is to put, when you'll see on the plat notes, when we come in with the final plat, the plan is to do walking trails and the like in that. So we think that given the development in the area, given the plan to maintain the trees, that this is a perfect candidate to upgrade to urban medium and allow for 2-acre lots. Our proposed plat that's the next zoning and plat that's behind this, we're averaging a 2.5-acre lot. So we're greater than 2 acres. And I don't know about you, but I believe this is a compelling case for changing the plan.
I wanted to add something to the end of that. Just like the last comp plan amendment that we looked at, the applicant comes in with their site to request a comp plan amendment to that site. Sometimes when we look at a broader context or the future of development in a larger area, we may want to make a recommendation to come back and revisit that. And Tim's presentation suggested that there may be changes in that area that need a broader context decision-making. In the last comp plan amendment, we approved the application and said we would come back and modify the area around it to make sure that the comp plan as a whole was considering all the changes in development. So I wanted to remind you of that conversation if you're thinking about this piece in the context of what's happening in the area. But that is on the table for you to make a recommendation about changes.
And when I met with staff, after the staff report came out, we discussed certain things that the director wanted to make sure that we made clear as part of our presentation. Not their job to do our job. Our job is to show you we think we're complying, and that's why I wanted to point out the tree preservation plan, the regulations that are proposed in the plat, and then the existence of a $2 million investment that these developers made to put that water system in.
Tim, can you tell, are you suggesting that you're going to get water from the existing water that's available?
We are not proposing to tie to that water on this plan because to justify the extension of that main, we would need smaller lots, and it's just counterproductive. The advantage of that water being there is there are fire hydrants every 500 feet on that line available for the firefighters. There's also a Edmond fire station that's closer than any of Oklahoma City's fire stations.
Is there any existing agreement with the city of Edmond for supplying services to this area?
Yeah, Oklahoma City has a mutual care agreement between the municipalities.
Tim, what does that mean exactly? I know what you said. That means if there's a fire and they're closer, or they'll attempt to respond, for example.
That's my understanding. I can't speak for the fire marshal's office, but that's my understanding is they have a mutual care coverage that if they can respond faster, they will. If Oklahoma City feels like they need the assistance, they'll call for it.
Okay, but it has no relationship to utility provision?
No.
At all?
Well, there's a separate agreement between Oklahoma City and Edmond and Oklahoma City and other communities for the access to water. That was agreed to by the Water Trust back when I was still the Water Trust engineer about 3 years ago. And that's what opened the door for Edmond to propose to, hey, tie on to our water. And that's what these developers did. So for all intents and purposes, this is Oklahoma City water. They're just buying it in bulk from Edmond.
Coming through Edmond, yeah.
They'll be billed by Oklahoma City and everything.
I guess my question is, your presentation relies in significant part on the water that's coming into Edmond to the east there, so that informs the kind of development that has occurred there, but it's apparently not going to be coming to the west.
Well, we don't know that for certain. Obviously, these are the major vacant tracts. As I mentioned, this would probably develop more intensely because of its position to the water line. This is a much closer extension. If this develops, or they come back and rezone that, they'll be required to extend that main across their frontage. So it brings it even closer to this piece. But what that drives is a smaller lot to justify the cost. These two tracts are not as heavily wooded as our tract. And our developer specifically bought that because of that. And so that, and really, I think what I'm saying with the water improvements is that it's changed the development. It's a game changer for how it's not low
Yeah, and
anymore.
that's driving some of the thought process of your developer and what we're talking about now.
And with the existing development, and so much of the land in Edmond already developed as 2-acre tracts, it's a consistent development pattern.
Yeah.
So we respectively request.
Right. I mean, I'm struggling with, I'm just thinking that nothing has changed on the ground so far as Oklahoma City is concerned, and I don't know if this isn't premature to hit this area right now. Just my thought.
It's one of the most gorgeous parts of our town.
Oh, it's
and it's very, and with the...
A lot of the most attractive real estate is east and northeast of the city, I agree.
The development of this particular tract here, because it was so heavily wooded, we did the same concept. We only cleared what we needed. And there's instant tree canopy out there, and we can get the water system approved fast enough. There are people wanting to build.
Other comments and thoughts, commissioners?
Just want to be sure I understand sort of what the question is here. Basically, this just comes down to a question of whether, I mean, the property can be developed. It can be developed as 5-acre tracts. So really what we're trying to decide is whether it would be appropriate to sort of more than double that number of housing units on this piece of property. And kind of what that tips on is the issue of the water. There is more intense development in the area, but it's served by water. One of the reasons why staff is recommending that this not be permitted is because there's not water to this site and probably won't be, at least not in the foreseeable future. I mean, am I right about this? Is that where we are?
When we did our original analysis of existing conditions, when we were building Plan OKC and creating this rural medium land use designation, we looked at several factors. And if you'll remember in those discussions, we were talking about these areas are not rural, not urban, they're urban. They have a mix of urban and rural uses. In some cases, they have water but not sewer. In some cases, they have higher level of fire protection, but no other services. In many cases, these rural medium areas were closer to the urbanized area, and they kind of helped transition from urban to rural. So there's mixes of all of those elements all across these rural medium areas. In our staff report, we highlighted where this was, the proximity to other rural medium, all of those same elements that we did in the initial phase of developing Plan OKC, and put it on the applicant to explain how that development is changing and what types of mitigation they might provide to make it more appropriate. And so from our standpoint, from the comp plan's 30,000-foot perspective, not much had changed in that area. And I think what Tim is arguing is that there are some changes or are some considerations with how they develop the property. So water isn't always the determining factor for rural medium.
So, but in this case, it's one significant factor. Distance from fire is protection is another.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
As well as, I think, the upland forest and the density of this particular project, in terms of the area that it covers, is questionable, for me in terms of where that positions itself by Lake Arcadia and whether or not 5-acre lots. I know you said, there would be 40% coverage for development, which 60% would be undeveloped, but you're still talking about, if you have 5-acre lots here, you're more inclined to have more upland forest area and everything saved, along with the, I think there's several streams on this property that also feed into Lake Arcadia, which are some of my concerns in addition to some of the concerns with fire and other things and water and so many other things. I just feel like this area probably will be developed eventually and could be. I just think we may be premature in this particular location for this particular application, and that for that reason it's difficult for me to support the change at this point. Not to say that as we move forward that it wouldn't be. I may be more inclined to as we move forward. It just seems to be a bit premature for me to support it.
May I share something? If we went with the 5-acre scenario, if we do a plat of 5 acres, you don't have to see it. It doesn't have to come to you.
Right.
There's no protection. This guy could go plow his trees tomorrow. We're giving the city and this community protection through the platting by the covenants and the restrictions on the plat that over the next 10 years as this develops, somebody can't go denudate the land. It'll be a requirement of plat. Without that, they can do 5-acre farm. This could create a farm out here. And I think it lacks protection because you don't have to see a 5-acre plat subdivision. It could be filed at the county, and they could start selling lots. So that's not a threat. That is just a suggestion that you lose protection. And I think, and not to argue with you, Dr. Cooper, but I think the development pattern in this area is pretty well set at 2 acres. We're surrounded by 2-acre subdivisions. And I think to ask this landowner to say, well, you can't do but 5, and he can't get his value out of his land, it's a tough case. The landowner as its seller. The developer will just go somewhere else. But anyway.
And to Tim's point, there is significant protection of the upland forest area provided in what he's talking about. I'm not convinced that it's not premature too, but that is a plus. And unfortunately, the comment that Tim made about the man getting the value out of his land, that's really not a planning commission issue. We're not statutorily, we can't even consider that.
I understand that, but it's a factor because you can throw a rock and hit 30,000 square foot lots from this site. So it's not like we're far removed from a higher density development. We're at 0.34. They're at 0.85. 3 times us.
I understand. I just wanted to make the financial point that the lot sizes, I understand, and the economics of it, I can intuit, but it's not something that could be persuasive to us as we decide how we're going to vote. Any other comments, commissioners?
Well, I mean, I guess my only thought is I look forward, which I try to do periodically, is that we run the risk potentially, if there, it's not a risk, but I mean the consideration for me is that the development pattern over which we have no control over intensifies in the area versus remains at 2 acres. If the water line changes, Edmonds extends their water line, you get an extension over to the north, and the next time we look at this thing, it's like it's now surrounded by even more intense development, because I think there is some logic to the point that Edmond doesn't necessarily have any way to go but this way. To an extent, they're moving. They appear to be moving down this way, and I mean I think the plan that's put in front of us, as I look at it, it's pretty good. It actually meets some of our considerations with respect to tree maintenance and other things. So it's hard. It's amazing when you drive up the Turner Turnpike and you see the Oklahoma City sign. When you go east or you're coming back west or east, and you see how far out the limits of Oklahoma City actually are. But I don't know, we seem to be moving that way. And so I think the development plan map, this has been a beneficial map for me to see what is in the area and what is now trending, I guess, in the area, you know.
And Lake Arcadia has become, as it's grown and developed around it, has become a very popular attraction for Oklahoma City residents. It's the closest recreational lake around. That's a lot of what's driving the development of this area. And it's there.
Yeah.
I'd go comment, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I agree with what Lee was saying. I think that this is an area that I have advocated from the time that the comprehensive plan was adopted, respect it. And I respect the opinion of the staff, and I respect the reasons why the staff says this should be denied. Because if there's anything that we need to preserve, it's what the comprehensive plan tried to do. It tried to say, that's out there. You can do 5-acre lots. Well, you know, on the one hand, I thought, well, now you've talked about preservation of the forest and the trees and everything. Well, a 5-acre lot's going to be a road into the 5-acre lot near the house, and unless they're going to plant corn, I don't see they're doing that, there's going to be trees all over the place. So I'm in favor of preserving the plan for now, and I really, like Lee, can't support this application today because, as Mike just said, you drive 100 miles east and 100 miles west, and finally you run into the city limits of Oklahoma City. And it's a matter of sustainability, and then when a development goes out there, well, then there's demand for a fire station, there's a demand for water, sewage, pickup, and until we get the innards of the city stabilized, et cetera, the opinion is that let's have some country. So that's my opinion about this one.
It's there already. There's 150 lots right here, platted.
I do have a question for you, Tim, to your point about 5 acres. What's the, I mean, this is how big, 139 acres, 130 acres?
No, we're 124.4 net of right-of-way.
And that is 124.4 that's developable?
Yes.
So if I divide that by 5, in the worst case scenario, thinking about a scorched earth development, that's 5 into 130 goes 20. What is that? That's 10, 20, 5. It's like 35 lots.
And we're at 49.
So in a we're just, because of the cost of the land and because of the popularity of this area, is potentially your argument, don't let me make it for you, you can make it for yourself, is that you could have, probably, you'd keep 30 lots. You could have 30 lots in this area, just flattening everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, the land's easily developable.
Deleting, there'd be no common area.
No common area, no clubhouse.
No clubhouse.
Yeah.
No.
We would use every inch of the
You'd be forced
24.4.
to.
Yeah.
I just
Whatever that
wanted
number
to,
is.
which is only 19, maybe
Correct.
less than your
It's
proposal.
not, Ms. Powers mentioned over 2 times, and we're not. We're less than that.
Okay, all right.
It wouldn't be double.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Commissioners, we've heard pro and con. Is there,
I make a motion to move denial. Second application.
we have a motion and a second for denial. Is there any further discussion? A vote yes is for denial. Cast your votes. It is denied.
So with our next 2 items, can we have them heard and have them not be in conformance with the plan?
Yeah, we need to make a motion on them. They're on the agenda. Right, Counselor?
Okay, so item 16 is PC 10497. It's the associated rezoning for this site to RA2.
The staff supports this.
Yeah.
We agree with it.
Yeah, we need a motion, however. Item
So make a
16.
motion to deny. Second.
Steve Ferguson, do you need to be heard before we hear a motion to deny this?
Well, if you're going to deny it, then I probably don't. We have a boundary dispute on the north line of the property. My client's on the property immediately north.
Okay.
Pending lawsuit.
Yeah, that's for the courts.
Is that the legal property that is adjacent to this one?
Yes.
That may be in question about the boundaries?
On the north side of the proposed subdivision, my client, Yellis Family Trust, owns the property immediately north, and there's a dispute. It's not been resolved. We filed suit to try to resolve it, but my client doesn't want any part, whether it's a 10-foot strip or a 100-foot strip or
All right,
would be rezoned.
We get the point. Thank you.
Make a motion to deny.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to deny item 16. Cast your votes. That's denied. Need a motion on item 17?
Also making a motion to deny. 17?
We need to continue the plat.
Yes.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Wait.
What?
We need to continue the plat because we can't, the plat's not valid without the zoning. So we'd like to put it on indefinite continuance.
Continue.
Continued indefinitely?
Yes.
Make a motion to continue until...
We'll continue indefinitely. That way we can get a new notice out
Until
when we come around.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to continue item 17 indefinitely. Cast your votes. And that's approved.
Item 18 is V16. It's a variance request to extend a water main to a property located at 1204, 1210, and 1214 North Hudson Avenue.
Is the applicant here?
Is there any reason why we would continue this?
No, and no reason we would deny it.
No reason to deny it. I'll move approval then. I'll move approval of the variance.
Yep.
Huh? I'll move approval of the variance.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the variance to item 18. Cast your votes. That's approved.
And item 19 is case C6888, the final plat of Ashton Court, Phase 1.
Hi. Didn't know I'd be back so soon. You missed me. Yeah, this is the final plat of the first phase of Ashton Courts. We've mimicked the preliminary plat. We agree with all the TEs. We have been working with the Public Works staff on a resolution to site distance solution, and we've come to an agreement on the resolution on that just today, and so we're thrilled to be able to put this forward, and we've agreed with the Public Works staff that we will present our final resolution per their comments on our paving plans for final approval by Public Works on paving.
But we're leaving the TE in for now, right? I think it stays.
That's fine, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would work.
I think so.
Because we'll resolve it under.
We understand
with the
that
final
you're
Talking about TE4?
Yeah.
You can leave it.
Yeah, that's what was just said.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And we don't have to worry about the variance that was provided earlier in the preliminary plat, do we? Access to Sarah Road?
That had to do with the separation.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that's what I thought. So we have someone, Sherry Compton, who wants to address us. And if you'd give us your name and address for the record, please.
Sherry Compton, 10608 Southwest 21st Street, Yukon, Oklahoma, 73099.
Thank you.
Okay. From the very first meeting with my HOA board and the engineers regarding this housing addition that was going in, one of our main requests was to have 22nd Street, which is their main street, to be a straight through street with no cul-de-sacs. The reason, and we were told by these engineers that basically don't bother asking because this commission would never approve that because they made a mistake in my neighborhood on 21st Street, which is a straight 1/2 mile shot with no speed deterrence, no nothing. And that's exactly what that road is.
We remember the case.
Yeah, you do. So, and so we didn't ask for that. But in the last meeting where the preliminary plat was approved, you brought it up about why don't you make that a straight street through, a throw street for that? How many houses would it cost you, Mr. Johnson? And he made an estimate of 3 to 4 houses that couldn't go in there. And then there was another question by Ms. Powers, how are the people going to get into the common area because of where it's going to be located?
Right.
And I think they put a sidewalk between 2 houses so that people can walk to it easier. We're going to still contend from the very first, Mustang Creek has always wanted that street to be a straight through with speed deterrence, unlike ours, to keep the back half of that neighborhood from using 21st Street as an exit for them. Because we're stubbed in at the back with our back street, which is Sycamore Creek. Mr. Johnson's engineering folks have helped us put an application in for stop signs on 21st, and we do appreciate that. Hasn't happened. It's still in the works, and we do appreciate that. But I don't see how adding stop signs in there is going to keep the traffic from coming through there. And our concern is the traffic on 21st, which is already pretty heavy, is going to be even more when the new neighborhood is done. If they do that straight through with their deterrence, then your people can drive through their common area from the back of the neighborhood instead of having to walk. The people will not drive through our neighborhood. There'll be a few probably. I wouldn't, but others would. And first responders that have a better way to some of those streets. Imagine going in there and getting lost. Then they have to go down to the other street and try to find it. It's just a straight shot's a good idea for us for many reasons, and I won't hide my pleasure if it gets to go through there. But this is my last shot to try to do this. I know this is final approval on this plat, so thank you for letting me speak and for hearing me.
Well, thank you for coming down.
You're welcome.
Just out of curiosity, before you go, so they'd have to leave their neighborhood, come out, get on Sarah, and then turn back west to get on 21st, because I don't see see the access. I'm sorry if you could direct me to that.
We don't have the full thing.
It's further west.
It's further west, where it stubs into the back street of my neighborhood. That's their second ingress-egress.
So is that this vacant lot, Tim, that's on the, that is about at Pine Creek Avenue?
It's back to Sycamore. Sycamore's the farthest.
Oh, I see. So Sycamore, then, it will connect when that second phase is built.
Absolutely.
Ah.
You see my concern.
So wouldn't it, though, if we keep the cul-de-sac, so you're saying then that, where would the traffic come from?
The back half of the neighborhood.
So the back half of the neighborhood would then come down, when you say the back half,
Well,
is the phase that's not developed.
Right. I'm looking at the full picture because my chance is now.
I get it. So they would come up north, catch Sycamore, head that way to avoid coming through
going all
their
through
neighborhood, and then they would be drag racing by your home, which is close to 21st Street, I'm
Which
guessing.
is already happening. I'm 3 houses off of Sarah.
Okay. Thank you. Now I understand
Now you
the
understand.
concern. Yeah, it's
Okay.
very helpful. Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you.
That's okay.
You may recall on the preliminary plat approval, we did discuss this, and apologies to the neighbors, but 2 wrongs don't make a right. The way that gritty subdivision was put together with no stopping components in there, it's just wrong for them. So we, on behalf of their neighborhood, have filed for 3 stop signs to be installed, and we have, 100% signatures all around them, so the whole neighborhood's behind it. Hopefully that'll go to Traffic Commission in June. We did agree, we originally had our are connecting West Taft and East Taft Street in the middle, where 23rd Street is, and we did agree to, 23rd Terrace. We did agree to make our street contiguous with 23rd Place, and we put in at the very west end of this first phase is a traffic calming island. So it'll slow down the cars, because we didn't want the same thing. We don't want kids racing down that road. So that's what we ended up with. That's what was approved on the preliminary plat.
Commissioners, any further discussion? Motion?
I move approval. Second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 19. Cast your votes. And it is approved.
Item 20 is a resolution of the Planning Commission approving the proposed 2017 General Obligation Bond Program. And I'm going to take you through a presentation that may look familiar to you from our previous study sessions, but for the benefit of the public, this is one of the first steps in the official approval process for the 2017 GO bond. Sarah, if you could advance for me the slides, since I don't have a remote up here. Just wanted to show you a project planning timeline you probably haven't seen before. Although the city has been preparing for this 2017 bond issue for quite some time, in earnest last summer we began exploring ways that we could reach out to the public, have a public input process into this, start preparing lists of needs for the city to include input from the community and planning commissioners, city council members, business owners, and all of that. So this outlines all the major milestones in the planning over the past year that we've gotten to this point today. It did include lots of different opportunities for engagement, and we ourselves have been talking about this in study sessions for the last month or so. Next slide is to summarize the public outreach process that we had. If you'll go to the next slide, we had many opportunities for public engagement, online opportunities, in-person opportunities, surveys that people could submit. In all, we had about 6,400 people participate through all of these various methods. In the next slide, it shows how many citizen surveys we got back. These are broad-level surveys asking about the importance to fund these different projects that could be included in a bond issue. Over 4,000 residents did complete this survey, and the findings from the survey reconfirmed from our community that these are indeed very important needs, and they strongly agreed that they should be funded. We also had an opportunity for people to hold smaller district or neighborhood meetings to really focus on the area around their neighborhoods or district and drill down into the types of improvements and projects that would help benefit those local areas. And we received 1,300 different surveys from residents, reaching 84 neighborhoods and small groups. We also had 8 different workshops around the city in different locations in January and February of this year, provided a great opportunity for citizens to engage one-on-one with city staff members and council members. And we did offer the surveys at those workshops for them to take on-site, on the workshop site. We also were able to show them how to use an app that was developed for them to put specific project ideas directly into the city's database. So through all of these different types of participation opportunities, we accumulated a list of over 3,000 project ideas from the public, which did contribute to and add to that broader list that I mentioned that city staff has been keeping for many years, and planning commissioners and council members and business owners have been submitting to the city. So after all of these engagement methods produced these project ideas and putting the list together, we had to come up with a way to prioritize the improvements, knowing that we had more projects than we could actually fund. What we're going to show you next is the package that we have come to, which represents a bond package that's going to be presented at 16 mills, which is the same millage rate that we have had consistently over the past, over a term of 10 years, the total package amount being $967.4 million. This package would include several propositions that people would vote on separately. You'll recognize many of these from the 2007 bond issue. There might be some variations in the way that they're broken apart with the 2017 bond issue, For the most part, it's going to address streets and bridges, traffic improvements, drainage improvements, parks and recreation facilities, libraries, some improvements to city sports facilities and civic facilities, transit, economic and community development, also known as GOLT, and fire and police facilities. So speaking of the prioritization system of taking all of those proposed projects from the community and everyone who's been collecting them over the years, we put together a methodology for sorting the projects. We did have the ability to have a lot of technical information and our geographic information system to start to put projects in a sequence and order and review them by specific criteria. And these criteria included things that data that we knew. For example, when we look at streets, we have a street condition, pavement condition index rating that we know how the condition of that street scores. So that methodology was able to be applied to all of the areas of the city that we felt that street resurfacing projects could benefit the community. And then by ranking those, we could see how far the funding would go down the list. The other piece that we applied to this methodology was our comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan, which was adopted in July of 2015, has a chapter which talks about capital improvements investments. So you can switch to the next slide. And this is what we reviewed. Since the Planning Commission's purview is to deem that the general obligation bond projects and capital improvements are in conformance with our comp plan, we used this guide to plug into the methodology for sorting the criteria of the projects. This chapter of the comprehensive plan, Chapter 3, Infrastructure and Investment, lines out some considerations for prioritizing investments. The next slide shows you an example of what that looks like. For example, you go to a sidewalks list, and this gives you considerations for what would contribute to that. So the next slide, Sarah, if you look at sidewalks, we would consider people who would use the sidewalk system, also known as responsive populations. We would want to prioritize sidewalks that connect neighborhoods to schools and parks. We also would like to connect bus shelters and bus stops and the transit routes through our sidewalk system. We'd like opportunities to connect existing sidewalk networks so that existing and new sidewalks can provide a greater capacity for pedestrians to travel throughout the city. Sidewalks can help revitalize neighborhoods and urban commercial districts. So these are examples of criteria that helped us sort and prioritize the projects that were proposed. So if you'll go to the next slide, this reiterates some of the criteria we used in our methodology again. And moving on. This is an example of how that translated into that technical information that we talked about before, using our geographic information systems and mapping tools to quantify the criteria and sort the projects. Okay, so now we'll go into the actual propositions. The streets proposition has multiple sub-propositions in it, and we walked through in our study session how each of these bond propositions would contribute towards implementing the vision of Plan OKC. Some have very direct considerations for Plan OKC, some not so direct, but as a package, the total bond program does indeed further the vision and the goals of the comprehensive plan. As we break it down and look at these different types of projects, under the streets proposition, we have street resurfacing projects, residential and arterial street resurfacing projects. A lot more money in the 2017 bond issue will go to making improvements to streets through resurfacings than did in the 2007. And this will carry the quality of our overall street network up significantly. So with the residential and arterial projects, we look back at Plan OKC. Plan OKC prioritizes doing things that are easy fixes. So as we know, street resurfacing projects have great bang for the buck. They're way less expensive than a complete street rebuild. You can go a lot farther and achieve very good results through street resurfacing. We also are able to impact the overall transportation network, and we're able to rethink how streets might be designed to be more conformance with the comprehensive plan, looking at opportunities to restripe those streets that are resurfaced to include things like a bike lane, if it's designated for a bike lane in Plan OKC. So it gives us opportunities to implement the plan. The next subcategory of streets is street widening projects. There are 17 street widening projects. Most of these street widenings address some of our capacity issues in Southwest Oklahoma City. As you know, Southwest Oklahoma City is long overdue for looking at this in terms of growth management. We also have an extension proposed to the Kilpatrick Turnpike, which is going to impact capacity issues of our arterial network getting to and from the turnpike. When we look at Plan OKC, again, those same criteria for prioritization would apply to this. The next category is street enhancement projects. This is a subcategory that includes streetscape improvements plus all of our bicycle infrastructure. So this category includes multiple projects across the city that help us implement the draft pedestrian bicycle plan called Bike Walk OKC, through establishing bike facilities in certain areas and establishing a crosstown bicycle corridor, which is a very important function to implement that plan. We also are in the process of wrapping up some area plans in the Windsor and West 10th districts, and streetscape improvements were one of those recommendations of the plan that it helps capture. Also targeting some streetscape investments in our strong neighborhoods areas and commercial district revitalization areas, as well as Classen Boulevard, which was subject of a study by the Urban Land Institute that made recommendations to that important commercial corridor. So this subcategory of streets really does hit on a lot of specific comp plan goals and priorities. Sidewalks is another component of the streets proposition. Sidewalk projects, there were 20 different projects. Some of these projects are very large in scale that can, even though the number 20 doesn't seem like very much, it actually does build sidewalks across Oklahoma City. 15 of those sidewalk projects do help implement the priority projects that are listed in our pedestrian bicycle plan. That plan was developed with a lot of public interaction, public outreach. We did a lot of analysis on how to make our sidewalk system the most efficient and connect to vital places that people need to go. Some of those sidewalk projects do help make areas ADA compliant, and some of those projects came directly out of the community. So when you look back at Plan OKC conformance, that responsive population and connectivity, all of those different points were hit with all the sidewalk projects that made the bond list. Next is bridges, and this is one of those categories where I said some comp plan conformance statements were easy to make and some really don't have a real direct connection to Plan OKC, other than as we do bridge improvements, these are going to be in areas of great need. So this will help promote public safety, will help with connectivity. So when we look at comp plan conformance, we are getting 14 projects for bridge improvements at $24 million, and that does help connect places and emergency response where they need to go. Traffic improvements, this also is something that helps with the overall network impact. So the traffic improvements includes 20 projects at $24.8 million. Our transportation element of the comp plan promotes that we can get people around, deliver services efficiently, and get emergency services throughout the city. So this will be able to provide new traffic signals, traffic signs, and devices at intersections, which help manage traffic flow. Drainage projects, there are two different types. Some are just general drainage improvements, and some are stormwater quality control improvements. Again, drainage improvements were things that were dictated by flooding incidents and costs going into remedying those. So the worst places in the city were able to be addressed through these 17 projects. Again, in terms of Plan OKC conformance, we look at minimizing damages and maximizing resilience for emergency response, which this can address. We also have a citywide hazard mitigation plan, and it does encourage better stormwater management. So the funding that can go to stormwater quality control through the bond issue is able to implement that plan. The next one is Parks and Recreation. This also includes trails. So parks projects, there's 19 projects at $119 million and 5 trails projects. These projects were driven by the comp plan's Parks Master Plan component. A lot of public feedback, public input went into creating this list for parks. So all of the criteria that were under parks in the checklist for Plan OKC really have been managed to be made through the Parks and Recreation Bond project list. Police and fire facilities. Police and fire are coming together to share the cost of creating a new police and fire training center and doing some improvements to existing fire and police stations. So with Plan OKC, Serve OKC, which is the public services element, promotes improving public safety, efficiencies, and levels of service, which these projects absolutely will do. And libraries. There are 4 projects proposed for libraries at $21.5 million. These projects will help improve some existing libraries. And city facilities is broken up into sports facilities, civic facilities, and the central maintenance facilities. So Plan OKC conformance really has several points that this helps facilitate. The economic development element of Plan OKC promotes placemaking efforts, recommends enhancing big league city amenities, and then the historic preservation element encourages preservation of important historic structures. One of those shown on this slide is the Civic Center, which would get additional improvements through this bond issue. Under the transit proposition, this would be able to fund the replacement of some buses, provide route-side amenities, and fleet expansion. Again, the transportation element of Plan OKC promotes expanding transit service, interconnecting transit with other modes, and then continuing to create multimodal corridors. So the bond issue will help achieve those goals. And economic development, or GOLT bond, is something that can be used for community and economic development. The proposal is to establish incentives, $60 million worth, for job creation and affordable housing. So in Plan OKC, our sustain or economic development element of the plan and our neighborhoods element of the plan also encourage that establishment of new or the expansion of existing financial incentives for the development of affordable housing. And also the economic development element of the plan encourages, specifically, strategic investment program to continue and enhance and encourage economic diversity by prioritizing incentives to targeted industry clusters. So that couldn't be more specific that this is something the comp plan encourages this tool to be used to do. So with that, we've reviewed the projects, provided you with a project list, and I believe you had some questions too about sidewalk connectivity to amenities like schools, which we provided you additional information about. And today, what we're seeking is a recommendation that indeed these projects are in conformance with the plan, and the next steps would be that your recommendation would be carried to City Council. There would be a series of meetings at City Council, an introduction on May 31st, and then a public hearing on June 13th, and then Council's anticipated to call the election at their June 20th meeting and set it for September 12th, 2017. So with that, I'd like to open it up for your discussion, and we have staff here to answer any questions that you might have.
I'd like to make an observation. I've been involved in different aspects of plan updates, different committees working on plan issues and so forth since 1990. And that's 27 years. My observation is that this is the first time that I have ever gone through a plan conformance review that to tie what was going on in the CIP plan with the OKC plan. So my compliments to the staff, to all the different department heads, Eric and others who were involved in this throughout. I saw real cooperation among departments working together, trying to solve common issues, identify the issues that were really important that could be dealt with. And it's a remarkable difference from 1990 to today. So my compliments to those of you on the staff who worked on that throughout the city.
And I'd like to add to that, I think that the revelation that I had was at the committee meeting, or when we, at the meeting before this meeting, when we had an opportunity to ask questions of the various departments and everything else. And the same thing that John just said was that this particular plan of where the money is going to go and what it's going to be spent for was just, to me, an extraordinary revelation of how far this city has come. It's listening to the folks who live here. It's listening to what the folks want to be in his city rather than what some person outside said, let's do that. And I really, great congratulations to everybody, all their input and what they did to it. I think it's a marvelous, marvelous step for this city. Great work. And do we do a motion or anything?
Well, yeah, hold on just a second. That's my second. Just one second. Aubrey, also, let me say kudos for just a fantastic job, as well as staff, just putting together everything. I just had a question that you can probably answer very quickly. With the GIS mapping, is this the first time that we've used this tool to really put together metrics for how to...
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, my question to you is this. The reliability of that, since it's the first time that we're using it over the 10-year span, how are we going to go back and perhaps look at the flexibility of reevaluating projects 5 years into the plan in terms of how those priorities are still being met?
Once this bond issue is approved, these projects are committed to build to the citizens. So all of these projects will be done with this bond issue. But the beauty of the process that we did is all of the projects that were submitted to us went through this scoring methodology in the system. So there were projects that really didn't make it onto the bond list that would still be needs of the community we could look at if additional sources of funding came up in the future, or for the next bond issue, for example. So by the time those additional projects might become a reality, we would have this methodology in place, we would have these systems in place to go back and reevaluate and look at again. But there are really not a lot of other funding options for doing capital improvements other than the GO bond. So we constantly use these computer systems and software to do analyses and look at trends, and as development happens, that automatically updates our GIS system. So at any point in time, we can look at and analyze information if you'd like to know how things have evolved. But in terms of the projects themselves, these will be set when people do vote on this bond issue.
Mike?
Just on the mill rate, right? This may be a question for Eric, I don't know. But that, you said we're using the same rate that we used 10 years ago. How's that rate set?
Set by the city council.
City council says that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think they should have increased it personally. It's just
And if you raise the millage, that's you, as Dick said, raising taxes.
Comment.
opportunity missed.
The email you sent out that listed all the projects was very helpful.
Great.
Very helpful.
Janice, anything?
Well, you really can't say enough about the job that staff has done to pull all this information together, and they've been so responsive to the specific questions I know I've had about different pieces of it. I really do appreciate it. And I think as we go forward with these kinds of things on Plan OKC and now in this process, we're learning an awful lot about how to better reach out to people for information and to get more feedback. I mean, in the past, I think there has been perhaps a bit of a top-down attempt to solve problems, and that attitude is shifting, but also both the technology and the tools about how to actually, get that input have been really developing and improving. And I think that's so important, for people to have that buy-in. Most people have no idea that, the closer government is to them, the more local it is, the more it impacts their lives. They're caught up in what's happening at the national level or even at the state level, but they don't give a whole lot of thought to what's going on at City Hall or at the school district. And really, those are the decisions that, affect them greatly on a day-to-day basis. So I think our ability to really get a feel for what those needs are and to grapple with that input is just so important. So I really have to commend the staff for the effort that they've put into that.
With that, we need a motion for a resolution of the Planning Commission to approve the proposed 2017 bond obligation program.
So moved.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 20, which is a resolution. Cast your votes. And that is done. That ends the individual items for individual consideration, and the next thing is election of officers.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate Janice Powers as chairperson. I'm sorry, Janice, but and Mike Hensley as vice chairman, whose terms will commence on the morning of June 9th, 2017.
I second the motion.
Oh, and it's permissible to vote for yourself. I think you have to.
Yeah, I say, you're going to have to. We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Cast your votes. Congratulations.
And thank you for your service.
Yes. Item 22 was continued. So we're to Planning Commission members. Any discussion or comments?
I would like to bring up again the issue of traffic calming. In the newspaper a couple of days ago...
Unfortunately, Eric just walked out. But.
Well, Eric. Well, I mean, this, John, is in your history. The folks in Heritage Hills trying to put stop signs at every intersection because of the number of traffic. You know, you were instrumental years ago in calming traffic in Heritage Hills to a certain extent. But
1986.
No. But apparently now the traffic is going, crazy because of Midtown development and all the other stuff going on. And I think that this particular, just like the woman that protests on that, there's a speed, goes like this. I think that needs to be prioritized and brought up. Speed humps, signage, lights, etc. I mean, it really is. The traffic in Oklahoma City, I don't know if you guys experience it, but this is contrasted 20 years ago. You could get from A to B, and now the streets are full of cars. It's really quite remarkable how much there is cars going, et cetera, and then through neighborhoods and all this. So, Aubrey, that's my recommendation, to kind of ramp that up and let's get some resolutions going that will help lots of neighborhoods, in lots of places. So that's my suggestion.
Heritage Hills is back again, putting in, or requesting at least, a bunch of stop signs to calm traffic because they got what they wished for, which was the city to improve all around them, which was a long-term goal of Heritage Hills when I was living there. We were interested in doing all kinds of things that we could do to help the surrounding community prosper and grow. And now the experience of that is, well, gee, we've got a traffic burden again. So we'll see how that plays out.
And to your point, I know we've been checking in on the status of that. The Traffic Commission subcommittee looking at traffic calming, and they were going to be making recommendations to the Traffic Commission that would probably result in some things that we could integrate into the subdivision regulation update, some improvements to what the city can require or allow. And Eric has been giving us updates about the status of that. When we did do our joint Traffic Commission, Planning Commission study session on this topic, we did talk about two conditions. One being, how do you resolve traffic problems that happen in existing developments? How do you prevent traffic problems from happening through good design in new developments? So we are very aware that we have two problems to solve. Probably the harder one to solve is mitigating traffic with existing developments. And I think that's where this traffic calming study that the Traffic Commission is doing is key. So we are continuing to work with Public Works on that, and then as the recommendations are made and there are things that they start to look at being able to approve, like the speed humps, speed bumps in different circumstances, that will be something that the city can do. And then, of course, new design, thought about the way that traffic circulates through subdivisions and through the community so that we don't have trips dumping on arterials, forcing trips that way. That will be a part of what we look at when we implement the comp plan through our code changes and our subreg updates. So it is in the forefront of our minds, and I know that your last meeting is going to be June 8th, but I promise you,
well, I'm just going to
we'll
say,
continue to work
I
on
won't
this.
be on the commission, but I'm going to look over your shoulder, and I can do email and write letters.
It's high on the list of things that we will make sure that we tackle.
Anything else from Planning Department?
No, although I do appreciate your comments and acknowledgement about the bond process. This really has been so rewarding because we had a comp plan we adopted in July of 2015, and one of the only tools that we have to shape our community is the investments we put in it through the general obligation bond issue. and to see that all the city departments, and council members, and planning commissioners, and the community were able to reinforce this is a need for our community. We are willing to invest in this. This is where we think the project should go. Came together in such a great way, and I think our city staff feels very confident about this making a big improvement in our community moving forward. And I do feel like it helps with the comp plan.
I would just like to see it go that much faster because it's, what is it, year 8 since we started the meetings for the comp plan?
We're not going to talk about that. It's fine.
I figured out I just can't stay here long enough to see all that happen. Development Services, Municipal Counselor's Office. Anything else from commissioners? Motion to adjourn. We're adjourned at 3:10.